I grip my water glass tighter, knuckles whitening as Marissa's words hang in the air between us. "So next week I'll be moving into your place," she says with a casual smile, as if announcing she's switching to almond milk or taking up jogging, just until I figure things out. The champagne pops open beside me, my father beaming as he pours the bubbling liquid into crystal flutes I've never seen before. My mother's china, the set she saves for Thanksgiving and Christmas, gleams under the chandelier light. The table arrangement should have been my first clue. Something was happening. Marissa's seated at the head of the table. The formal settings, the champagne chilling. This isn't Sunday dinner. It's an ambush. "I've already started packing," Marissa continues, accepting a flute from Dad with a gracious nod. "It shouldn't take more than a day to get everything moved in." My parents exchange pleased glances across the table, nodding along as if this is the most reasonable plan in the world. As if my consent is merely a formality, already given. "To new beginnings," my father says, raising his glass. Everyone lifts theirs in response. Everyone except me. The garage boxes make sense now. 3 days ago, I'd found them stacked against the wall, oversized plastic tubs labeled Marissa's winter clothes and Marissa's books. When I texted her about them, she'd brushed it off. "Just temporary storage," she said, just until she found more space in her apartment. I should have known. Just like I should have known what it meant when I confronted my parents about paying Marissa's rent for the 3rd time this year. "She's going through a rough patch," Mom had said, waving away my concerns. "That's what family does, we help each other." I hear my mother's voice from last week, the phone call I wasn't supposed to overhear while waiting in her kitchen. "Eden is so lonely in that big house," she'd told Aunt Sarah. "She needs her sister's company. It's perfect timing, really. Perfect timing. As if my life exists solely to accommodate Marissa's latest crisis." I set my water glass down carefully, reaching for my purse on the floor beside me. The trembling in my hands has nothing to do with nervousness and everything to do with fury. "Why do you look so serious?" Marissa laughs, her eyes darting briefly to our parents. "This is good news for both of us. You get company, and I get to save on rent for a while." My fingers closed around the manila envelope I'd brought, the one I'd almost left in the car, thinking tonight wasn't the right time. But there is no right time with my family. There is only their time, their plans, their expectations. The tremor in my hand steadies as I place the envelope on the table. "Actually," I say, my voice calmer than I feel, "I have news too." My parents' expressions shift instantly. My mother's smile falters, eyes narrowing slightly. My father lowers his champagne glass, forehead creasing with concern. The change is subtle but unmistakable, the united front forming against the daughter who isn't following the script. "What kind of news?" My mother's tone carries a warning. "Don't ruin this. Don't be difficult." I feel the weight of the familiar labels hovering in the air: selfish, difficult, uncaring. The stakes of defiance are clear. Disagree and become the family villain. Again. Looking at their expectant faces, I realize this pattern has defined my entire life. Marissa takes. I give. My parents enforce the transaction. The roles never change. The lines never shift. Until now. I place the manila envelope in the center of the table, my fingers lingering on the edge. The room falls silent, my family's anticipation hanging heavy in the air. "What's that?" My mother's voice carries a hint of irritation, as if my interruption is derailing an already settled plan. "This," I say, carefully withdrawing the papers inside, "is the sale agreement for my house. I sold it last week. I have 30 days left before I move." The silence that follows is absolute. Marissa's champagne glass slips from her fingers, shattering against the hardwood floor. No one moves to clean it up. My father's mouth opens and closes like a fish suddenly finding itself on dry land. "You what?" Marissa finally whispers. I flip through my phone, pulling up the Pinterest board I discovered this morning. Interesting timing, isn't it? While you were planning to move in, Mom and Aunt Sarah were already designing your future bedroom in my house. I turn the screen toward them, displaying their meticulous board labeled Marissa's new room. My throat tightens as I watch recognition flash across their faces. 9 years of saving every possible penny, working overtime, sacrificing vacations and new clothes, all to afford that house, my dream home. And to them, it was just another resource to be redirected to Marissa. My father stands abruptly, towering over me. "You can just cancel the sale," he says, waving his hand dismissively. "These things have cooling off periods." My mother rises too, resting her hand on his arm. Eden, we already promised Marissa she could stay as long as she needed. You can't possibly expect her to find a place in 30 days. Actually, Aunt Sarah pipes up from the end of the table. We were going to move most of her things next Tuesday while you were at work, just to make it easier for everyone. The coordinated betrayal steals my breath. I glance at Dorothy, my mother's oldest friend, sitting uncomfortably beside Aunt Sarah. She stares fixedly at her plate, avoiding eye contact with everyone. You can't do this, my father says, his voice hardening. What about your property taxes coming due? You know I always help with those. The implied threat isn't subtle. His one annual contribution to my finances dangled now as leverage. Eden, my mother says softly, her voice taking on the concerned tone she uses when discussing unstable people. I'm worried about you. This kind of impulsive decision-making isn't like you. Are you feeling all right? Have you been taking care of yourself? I recognize the strategy immediately. If not compliant, then possibly unwell. It's a familiar path in our family dynamic, one that's kept me in line for years. You did this on purpose, Marissa accuses, tears streaming down her face. You found out I needed a place to stay and sold your house just to spite me. The accusation lands like a physical blow. This is how it always goes. My boundaries recast as cruelty, my self-preservation painted as selfishness. For a moment, I consider explaining the truth. The catastrophic roof replacement that drained my savings, the water line break, the heating system failure, the mounting financial pressure that made selling not just advisable but necessary. But what would be the point? They've already cast me as the villain in this family drama. Why give them more ammunition? I made this decision for my own reasons, I say instead, keeping my voice steady. And it's final. So you're just going to leave your sister homeless? My mother's voice rises. After everything we've done for you? The familiar weight of guilt settles on my shoulders. Everything they've done for me. The invisible ledger of family obligation that only ever seems to accumulate in one direction. Marissa isn't homeless, I point out. She has an apartment, and if that doesn't work, she has your spare bedroom. That's not the point, my father interjects. Family helps family. Period. Anyone. The unspoken remainder of that sentence hangs in the air, and you're not being family. I think, I say carefully, gathering the sale papers back into the envelope, that we have different definitions of help. Under the table, I feel a gentle squeeze on my hand. Dorothy, still avoiding eye contact with everyone else, whispers so quietly I almost miss it. Good for you. It's a small validation, but in this moment, it feels monumental. One person in this room doesn't see me as selfish or cruel for protecting myself. As I sit there with my family's accusations hanging in the air, I wonder whether I should explain the financial struggles that forced me to sell my beloved home, or simply hold firm without justifying my decision. Would sharing my vulnerability help them understand, or just give them new ammunition to use against me? The first call comes Tuesday morning while I'm fixing my coffee. Aunt Sarah's name flashes on my phone screen, unusual for a weekday before 9. Eden, honey, I just talked to your mother. Her voice carries that particular tone, the one reserved for funerals and family scandals. Is it true you sold your house just to keep Marissa from staying with you? My coffee sloshes over the rim of my mug, scalding my fingers. What? Marissa called me in tears last night, said you sold your beautiful home out of spite, knowing she needed a place to stay. The burning on my hand fades as a different heat rises in my chest. That's not what happened. Your sister will be homeless, Eden. I never thought you could be so cruel. The calls continue all day. Uncle Robert, Cousin Jennifer, even my father's golf buddy Chuck, whose connection to this situation escapes me entirely. Each conversation follows the same script. Marissa's desperate situation, my apparent heartlessness, their profound disappointment in me. While preparing dinner, I make the mistake of checking Facebook. Marissa's latest post appears at the top of my feed. The hardest lesson in life is learning who truly has your back when times get tough. Family should be forever, not just when it's convenient. 27 sympathetic comments follow, including one from Mom. We're here for you, sweetheart. Always. The knife in my hand chops carrots with increasing force. The final blow comes Thursday, when my colleague Lisa stops by my desk, her expression pinched with concern. I ran into your sister at Starbucks this morning, she says, lowering her voice. She told me about the house situation. If you need help finding her temporary housing, my church has a program. The carrot pieces on my cutting board splinter under the blade. What exactly did Marissa tell you? Lisa shifts uncomfortably. Just that she's facing homelessness because of some sudden decision you made. She seemed really upset. My jaw tightens so hard it aches. Thanks for your concern, Lisa. But Marissa isn't homeless. She has an apartment, and parents with a 4-bedroom house. After Lisa leaves, I lock myself in the bathroom stall, hands trembling as I text my sister. Stop telling people I'm making you homeless. It's a lie and you know it. Her response arrives instantly. You're selling the house I was counting on. What would you call it? The roof replacement came first, $11,000 I hadn't budgeted for, when the March storms revealed leaks in 3 different rooms. I emptied my vacation fund and took a small loan, telling myself it was a one-time emergency. Then the water line broke in April. $8,200 for emergency repairs and landscape restoration. I canceled plans to visit my college roommate in Arizona, picked up weekend marketing work for a local realtor, and ate ramen for dinner more nights than I care to admit. The heating system failure in June was the final blow, $5,000 I simply didn't have. Each night after work, I'd sit at my kitchen table, surrounded by spreadsheets and bank statements, calculating and recalculating figures that refused to balance. The crying started around then. Silent tears that came only after midnight, when I was certain no neighbors walking dogs might glance through my windows and see the truth that the woman they waved to each morning, the one who always appeared composed and capable, was falling apart behind closed doors. My reflection in the bathroom mirror each morning reveals the caustic dark hollows beneath my eyes that concealer can't quite hide, collarbones more pronounced against my blouses. When my pants began slipping at the waist, I punched new holes in my belt, rather than buy smaller sizes. Temporary situation, temporary solution. While maintaining this facade, I pack my home each evening. 9 years of memories sorted into keep, donate, and trash. Books that once lined entire walls now fill boxes stacked in corners. The wedding photos of friends, the graduation pictures of cousins, the vacation snapshots all bubble-wrapped and nestled in containers labeled with blue marker. Through it all, I document everything. Bank statements in chronological order. House repair invoices filed by date and category. Text messages screenshot and saved. A fortress of paper proof against the siege of family fiction. While packing my office bookshelf, I find it a framed photo I'd almost forgotten. Me, standing on the front porch of this house, the day I signed the mortgage papers, keys clutched in my hand, smile threatening to split my face. The realtor had taken it as a surprise, catching the exact moment I realized I'd actually done it, purchased a home entirely on my own. I traced the frame's edge, remembering that feeling. Pride without a hint of apology. Accomplishment without anyone else's approval attached. I place it carefully atop the nearest keep box, this tangible reminder of what I built and what no one can diminish. The doorbell rings Saturday afternoon, while I'm wrapping dishes in newspaper. Through the front window, I spot my parents' Buick in the driveway, Marissa's red compact behind it. No warning text, no courtesy call. I consider not answering, but the knocking grows more insistent. When I open the door, they file in like funeral directors, solemn, judgmental, prepared to manage a difficult situation. Mom spots the boxes immediately. You're really going through with this madness. I fold the newspaper around another plate, securing it with tape. The closing is in 3 weeks. Your sister needs you. Mom's voice rises slightly. You've always been selfish, but this is beyond understanding. Your sister needs you. The plate in my hands remains steady, though something shifts inside me. I've spent my entire life being told what Marissa needs. The words emerge calmer than I feel. Did anyone ever ask what I need? Dad clears his throat. Eden, be reasonable. I need financial stability. I need to sleep at night without panic attacks about bills. I need to not drain my retirement fund for house repairs I can't afford. I continue wrapping dishes methodically. Unlike past confrontations, I don't stop what I'm doing to give them my full attention. I don't offer beverages or comfortable seats. I continue my work while they stand awkwardly in my half-packed kitchen. We're your family, Mom says, voice wavering between anger and disbelief. Yes, you are. And I've never once asked you for money. Not for college, not for my first apartment, not for this house, and not for the repairs that drained my savings. For once, they have no immediate response. Marissa stares at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. Dad examines the ceiling as if architectural features have suddenly become fascinating. I realize with startling clarity that I no longer need their approval or understanding. The constant ache for validation I've carried since childhood has quieted, replaced by something sturdier. When I stand to reach for another stack of plates, I notice my posture has changed. Shoulders back, spine straight, eyes level with theirs instead of downcast as usual. The physical manifestation of an internal shift. Dorothy arrives that evening with Thai food and 2 bottles of wine. She helps me pack photo albums while sharing stories of her own sister, the one who didn't speak to her for 3 years after Dorothy refused to co-sign a loan. Family patterns are the hardest to break, she says, carefully wrapping a crystal vase my grandmother left me. But sometimes breaking them is the only way forward. Monday brings an unexpected text from my colleague Thomas. Need help moving? Got a truck and strong back. Family often sees us least clearly. Just say when. That afternoon, Barbara, my financial advisor, emails confirmation of my townhouse application approval. Based on your financials, this move reduces your housing costs by 42%. The right decision for your long-term security. Call if you need anything else. The contrast strikes me as I review these messages over dinner. These people ask what I need, rather than telling me what to give. They offer specific help instead of vague demands. That night, I spread my financial documents across the dining room table: bank statements, repair invoices, property tax assessments, retirement account withdrawals. Everything meticulously organized, the complete picture of my financial reality. Tomorrow's family meeting won't be an intervention for me, but a reckoning with facts they've chosen to ignore. My one advantage remains unspoken. The sales agreement includes a 30-day rent-back clause. For a month after closing, I can stay in the house while finalizing my townhouse purchase. Breathing room they don't know I have. At exactly 7 o'clock Tuesday evening, the doorbell rings. When I open it, I find not just my parents and Marissa on the porch, but Aunt Sarah, Uncle Robert, and my cousin Jennifer, standing behind them, a family firing squad assembled for execution. I stand at the head of my dining room table, a position that feels foreign yet right. The manila folder in my hands holds every financial statement, every bill, every painful reminder of why I had to sell my home. My fingers no longer tremble as I open it. Before anyone says another word, I need you all to see something. My voice carries a steadiness I don't entirely recognize. The family gathering looks larger than I anticipated. My parents, Marissa, Uncle William, Aunt Sarah, and my support team, Dorothy, Barbara, and Thomas. I lay out the documents methodically, arranging them in chronological order: bank statements, emergency fund withdrawals, contractor invoices. Each paper tells part of the story I've kept hidden. This is the roof replacement from last spring. I slide the $11,200 invoice toward the center where everyone can see it. The 30-year shingles only lasted 22. Insurance covered nothing. Uncle William adjusts his glasses, leaning forward with a frown that cuts deep lines across his forehead. Waterline repair, $8,200. Another paper joins the first. When the city updated the main line, it revealed my connection was deteriorating. No warning, no payment plan offered. NES. My mother shifts in her seat but remains uncharacteristically silent. Heating system replacement, $5,000. The third major bill completes my trinity of home ownership nightmares. The energy efficiency rebate covered barely a quarter of the cost. I maintain direct eye contact as I speak, something I rarely managed in family confrontations before. Barbara nods almost imperceptibly from her seat near the window, encouraging me to continue. My emergency fund is gone. I place my bank statement on top, the balance painfully clear. My financial advisor recommended selling while the market is still hot rather than risking a forced sale later when I might be underwater. Marissa's chair scrapes against the hardwood as she stands abruptly. This is creative accounting, Eden. You've always been good with numbers when it suits you. Her voice carries the familiar accusatory edge. You're just trying to avoid your family responsibilities. Uncle William, whose judgment I've feared since childhood, surprises me by turning toward my sister. Marissa, what's your current employment situation? Last I heard you were between jobs. The unexpected redirection leaves Marissa fumbling. I'm exploring opportunities. The job market is complicated right now. My mother jumps in. William, This isn't about employment. Family duty exists regardless of finances. Eden has always had that beautiful house with all that extra space. Speaking of space, Aunt Sarah interjects, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she examines my heating bill. Why can't Marissa stay with you and Roger? You have that guest room you just redecorated. The conversation shifts like a current, pulling away from me and swirling around the room as family members begin questioning the arrangement I've endured my entire adult life. Dorothy clears her throat. I've known this family for 20 years. Eden bought her house without any family financial support. Meanwhile, I've watched Marissa receive help with rent, car payments, and credit card bills repeatedly. Her voice carries the weight of long observation. The pattern has been clear to everyone except those closest to it. Barbara straightens her blazer before speaking. As Eden's financial advisor, I can tell you that enabling financial dependency ultimately harms both parties. The one giving depletes their resources, while the receiver never develops crucial life skills. Thomas, sitting quietly until now, leans forward. My brother lived with my parents until he was 42. They paid his bills, made his appointments, solved his problems. When they passed, he had no idea how to function. He lost their house within a year because he never learned to manage money. He glances at my parents. Sometimes the most loving thing is to stop rescuing someone. The room falls unusually quiet as these outside perspectives penetrate the family mythology we've operated under for decades. Uncle William breaks the silence. Eden, why didn't you share these financial struggles sooner? I hesitate, the question catching me off guard. Should I maintain the privacy and independence that had served as my armor for years? Or would opening up to select family members create the support system I never thought possible? Before I can answer, my father shifts in his chair, eyes fixed on the hardwood floor. It's the first time I can remember him sitting through a family discussion without dominating it. My mother's rigid posture gradually softens, her hands now resting open on the table instead of clenched in her lap. Marissa stands suddenly, grabbing her purse. This is ridiculous. You're all acting like I'm some kind of parasite. Eden has always been the golden child with her perfect house and perfect job, while everyone ignores how hard things have been for me. When no one jumps to her defense, she storms toward the door. The slam echoes through the house as she leaves. Uncle William waits for the reverberations to fade before speaking again. I think it's time we had a family financial planning session, for everyone. He looks pointedly toward my parents, including Marissa. My mother's eyes glisten with unshed tears, but for once, they're not being weaponized against me. My father reaches for her hand across the table, his face unreadable, but his silence speaking volumes. For the first time in a family confrontation, I'm not the one left feeling like I've done something wrong. I arrange the last of my kitchen glasses into a box, wrapping each one in newspaper with methodical precision. My final week into my 30-day countdown, and the house already feels hollow, memories peeling away with each item packed. The doorbell rings. I check my watch right on time. My parents are nothing if not punctual when they have an agenda. I open the door to find not just my parents but Marissa too, standing on my porch like a united front. My mother clutches her purse with white knuckles. My father's smile appears rehearsed. Eden, honey, my mother says, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. We've been talking, and we think we've found the perfect solution. A compromise, my father adds, his voice carrying that false cheerfulness he reserves for difficult conversations. Marissa follows them in, her eyes darting around my half-packed living room before settling on me with a practiced look of gratitude. I really appreciate you hearing us out. They arrange themselves on my couch, the only piece of furniture not yet wrapped in moving blankets, while I remain standing. The power dynamic isn't lost on me. We know selling the house is your decision. My mother begins, punctuating her words with a nervous laugh. But instead of Marissa moving in with you, what if you helped her get her own place? My father nods enthusiastically, while carefully avoiding any mention of actual numbers. Just a loan to get her started. With your success, it would hardly affect you. Unlike me, Marissa interjects, her voice soft and rehearsed. Some people just have bad luck, you know? The implication hangs heavy in the air between us. You're successful. She's struggling. You owe her this. My mother leans forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Eden, the family has always stuck together. If you can't help your sister just this once. She trails off, the threat clear. Cut Marissa off, and I cut myself off from the family. I walk to the dining room table where I've laid out several documents. They watch me, confusion replacing their certainty. I'm meeting with my lender tomorrow, I say, picking up a pre-approval letter. For a townhouse downtown, the monthly payment will be nearly 40% less than my current mortgage. I hand the letter to my father, whose eyes widen at the numbers. Selling this house isn't just about Marissa. It's about rebuilding my emergency savings after 3 major home repairs drained them. It's about reducing my financial stress. I take a deep breath. It's about finally prioritizing my financial health. My mother starts to speak, but I hold up my hand. I can't support Marissa financially, I continue, but I can help her support herself. I pull a business card from my pocket and hold it out to Marissa. She stares at it without taking it. Our marketing department has an entry-level position opening next week. The starting salary would cover rent on a 1-bedroom apartment. I spoke to HR yesterday, and they'd be willing to interview you. Marissa's mouth opens, then closes. For once, she seems genuinely speechless. This isn't charity, I add. It's an opportunity. Whether you take it is your choice. My father stands abruptly, moving toward the window where bare hooks show where family photos once hung. Eden, be reasonable. Marissa needs... No, I interrupt, walking to the coffee table where I've placed a manila folder. This is what being reasonable looks like. I am C of no. I open the folder and pull out a spreadsheet, placing it on the table between us. The itemized list contains every financial gift my parents have given Marissa over the past 5 years. Car payments, rent supplements, credit card bailouts. The total at the bottom, circled in bright red, makes my mother gasp. I compiled this from the conversations you've had in front of me. I suspect the actual total is higher. My father picks up the paper, his forehead creasing as he studies the numbers. This isn't love, I say quietly. It's dependence, and it's hurting both of you. My father opens his mouth to object, then falls silent, his eyes fixed on the spreadsheet. We just wanted to help her, my mother whispers, tears welling in her eyes. The best help is teaching someone to stand on their own, I reply, my voice steady despite the hammering in my chest. You taught me that once, remember? When I wanted to quit college because it was too hard? The memory hangs between us, my father refusing to let me move back home, when calculus overwhelmed me, insisting I find a tutor instead. We're doing you no favors by making life too easy, he'd said then. Strange how principles change when applied to different daughters. The silence stretches, broken only by the sound of packing tape from the box I'd abandoned when they arrived. Finally, my father puts his arm around my mother's shoulders. We should go, he says quietly. They walk to the door, my mother not quite meeting my eyes. Marissa hesitates, looking back at the business card still in my hand. I don't need your charity job, she says, but there's less conviction in her voice than usual. I place the card on the entryway table. It's not charity, it's opportunity. She turns away, but as she follows my parents out, I catch her slip the card into her purse when she thinks I'm not looking. The door closes behind them. I stand in my half-empty living room, listening to their car start and pull away. The silence feels different now, not hollow, but open, expansive. I sink onto the couch, running my hand over the familiar fabric. Tomorrow it goes into storage until I move into the townhouse. 9 years of memories in this house, and now an uncertain future lies ahead. I feel both liberated and isolated, triumphant and alone. The family dinner next month looms in my mind. Will they even still want me there? Has this confrontation permanently altered our relationships? The answering machine light blinks with 3 new messages. Probably more relatives calling to weigh in. I ignore it, focusing instead on the business card Marissa took. One small step. Perhaps the first of many. I stand in the center of my downtown loft, savoring the space around me. Sunlight streams through the industrial windows, warming the hardwood floors beneath my bare feet. 3 months ago, this place felt foreign, a compromise rather than a choice. Now it feels like the home I never knew I needed. Another box checked off the budget, I tell myself, updating my financial tracking app. My mortgage payment appears in green, a full 30% less than what I paid for the Craftsman. Barbara's weekly check-ins have transformed what was once my greatest source of anxiety into a structured ritual I actually look forward to. The kitchen island holds my newest purchase, a professional-grade camera that would have remained a distant wish in my old financial reality. My first photography class starts tomorrow evening, the course catalog still open on my tablet. I run my fingers over the camera's textured grip, permission to create rather than just survive. My phone buzzes with a reminder. Sunday dinner at my parents'. I feel the familiar tightening in my shoulders, then consciously release it. These dinners have changed, just as I have. Later, I step through my parents' front door carrying a bottle of wine, rather than my usual tension headache. Dad greets me with a hug that feels genuine instead of perfunctory. "Eden, come see what your sister brought," he says, his voice carrying none of the comparative undertones that once filled our interactions. In the dining room, Marissa arranges flowers in a simple vase. She looks up, her smile reaching her eyes. "They gave me my first business cards today," she says, pulling one from her pocket. "Assistant marketing coordinator. Sounds fancy for someone who mostly makes coffee runs, but I'm learning so much." She hands me the card proudly, without the defensive edge that once colored her accomplishments. My mother appears in the doorway, carrying a casserole that isn't placed strategically closer to Marissa's place setting. "Tell us more about the social media campaign you mentioned last week," Mom says, looking directly at Marissa. Then she turns to me. "And Eden, how was your photography class?" I blink, still adjusting to the novelty of balanced attention. As we eat, I notice my father asking thoughtful questions of both daughters, not just fawning over Marissa's every word. 1 week later, laughter fills my loft as Dorothy raises her glass. To homes that shelter us and boundaries that protect us, she toasts. Around my coffee table sit Thomas, Barbara, Uncle William, and me, my chosen family, alongside the blood relative who surprised me most. Dorothy presents me with a frame containing 2 photos, me signing my original mortgage papers 9 years ago, and me holding the keys to this townhouse. 2 brave beginnings, she says softly. 2 very different women, I add, recognizing how much I've changed. The following weekend finds Marissa and me at my kitchen table, surrounded by spreadsheets and calculator apps. "So if I put away 15% of each paycheck, I could have first and last month's rent by January," she says, chewing her lip as she runs the numbers again. Our parents sit on my sofa, watching this scene with a mix of pride and regret. "We should have done this years ago," Mom admits quietly. "We thought we were helping, but we were hurting both of you in different ways." Dad nods, his eyes revealing the difficult journey of unlearning decades of enabling behavior. As I watch Marissa calculate her budget with determination I'd never seen before, I wonder about the fine line between helping and enabling those we love. Is it ever possible to find the perfect balance between supporting family and maintaining healthy boundaries? Or must we sometimes allow others to struggle so they can truly grow? I clutch Grandmother Lila's hand-knit scarf, rubbing the soft yarn between my fingers as if somehow the texture might summon her spirit back. The funeral parlor smells like artificial flowers and furniture polish. I've tucked myself away in the corner chair, watching my family perform their version of grief. Mom dabbles at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, letting out occasional theatrical sobs that echo against the mahogany paneling. Every few minutes, she slips to the bathroom, emerging with freshly applied mascara and her phone clutched in her perfectly manicured hand. The soft click of her camera captures her sorrowful pose beside the gleaming casket for her social media followers. "This lighting is terrible," she mutters, reviewing the photos. Dad stands near the entrance, his voice rising as he argues with the funeral director. "These charges are completely unreasonable," he snaps, tapping furiously at his phone screen. "My stock alerts don't stop just because—" He glances around, lowering his voice. "Just because we're having a family situation. A family situation. That's what death is to my father, an inconvenient interruption to checking his investment portfolio." My brother Cole slouches in a chair across the room, head bent over his phone, thumb scrolling endlessly. The glow from his cryptocurrency app reflects in his glasses. He hasn't looked up in 20 minutes, not even when distant relatives approach to offer condolences. I close my eyes and remember the weekends at Grandma and Grandpa's house. The smell of cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. Grandpa Walter teaching me to change the oil in his first delivery truck, his hands steady as they guided mine. "Hadley girl," he'd say. "Knowing how things work matters more than knowing how to buy new ones." A tear slides down my cheek. A real one. Later, we gather in Aaron Feldman's office. The family attorney's wood-paneled sanctuary lined with leather-bound law books and the faint scent of pipe tobacco. Mom immediately claims the central chair, arranging herself like she's posing for a portrait. Dad stands behind her, hands on the chair back, assuming the position of authority. I was thinking we could list the harbor house immediately. Mom says, inspecting her nails. The market's peaking, and that view will fetch a premium. The boat should sell quickly too, Dad adds, nodding. And those antiques. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Cole interrupts, actually looking up from his phone. I've already got buyers interested in Grandpa's truck fleet. My startup could use that capital. Aaron clears his throat, silencing the vultures. He looks at me briefly, something unreadable flickering across his face. He pulls out a thick document, placing it deliberately on his desk. As executor of Walter and Lila Monroe's estate, he begins, his voice formal. I'm required to read their final wishes exactly as written. My family leans forward expectantly. Aaron adjusts his glasses and begins reading, his tone measured and precise. Legal phrases wash over us until he reaches the critical line. He pauses, takes a breath, and continues. I hereby bequeath my entire estate, valued at approximately $31.5 million, to my granddaughter, Hadley Elizabeth Martin. The silence that follows feels like the moment before a storm. I blink, certain I've misheard. The entire estate? Dad repeats, his voice dangerously quiet. There must be some mistake, Mom says, her social media smile vanishing. Cole stands abruptly. What did you do? He demands, glaring at me. How did you manipulate them? The accusation stings worse than if he'd slapped me. I didn't. My voice catches. I had no idea. Aaron raises his hand for silence, then reaches for his computer. Walter and Lila anticipated your reaction. They prepared this. He turns the screen toward us. Grandma and Grandpa appear, sitting together on their porch swing. They look tired but resolute. If you're watching this, Grandpa begins, then our decision has come as a shock to some of you. Grandma's gentle voice continues. Gregory, Serena, Cole, we've watched how you speak about us when you think we're not listening, how you plan for our money while we're still living. My throat tightens as memories flood back. Being dropped off at their modest-looking home, which apparently concealed millions while my parents attended networking events. Teenage me helping Grandpa maintain his small fleet of trucks that were apparently the foundation of a shipping empire. Grandma teaching me to bake, to garden, to live with purpose rather than pretense. Hadley is the only one who ever loved us for ourselves, Grandma says, her eyes welling, not for what we could give her. The video ends. Aaron closes his laptop with quiet finality. In the parking lot, Dad corners me against my car, his breath hot on my face. You'll transfer control to me tomorrow, he says, voice low and dangerous. You can keep 12%. Darling, Mom coos, appearing at his side, her concern as manufactured as her grief. This kind of money requires experience to manage. You simply aren't equipped. Cole looms behind them. Remember what family loyalty means, Hadley. Remember who takes care of who. I grip my keys tightly, feeling the metal bite into my palm. I need time to think. I manage, voice trembling but firm. Dad's face darkens. Remember who owns your apartment building, Hadley. Remember who can make one phone call and leave you homeless. They walk away, a united front of entitlement. I stand frozen, keys digging into my skin, the weight of $31 million, and my grandparents' trust pressing down on me like a physical force. That night I pace my tiny studio apartment, panic clawing at my chest. Everything I own fits in this room. My life as a school counselor barely covers rent. I have no savings, no backup plan. I sink onto my bed, fingers still clutching Grandma's scarf, when a pounding at my door makes me jump. Management inspection, a gruff voice calls. My phone rings. Aaron's name flashes on the screen. Hadley, he says urgently when I answer. They're planning to lock you out. It's illegal, but they might try. You need to leave. Now. Tears blur my vision as I throw essential items into a backpack, my hands shaking so badly I can barely zip it closed. I never imagined that inheriting a fortune would leave me feeling more vulnerable than I've ever been in my life. But as I grab Grandma's scarf and wrap it around my neck, her voice seems to whisper in my ear. Stand your ground, Hadley girl. Some things are worth fighting for. The following day, rain pelts the windshield as I pull up to Grandma and Grandpa's Gig Harbor home. The sprawling craftsman sits back from the road, wrapped in cedar and stone, modest in design, despite its waterfront location. Nothing like the gleaming modern mansions that have sprung up around it over the decades. I sit in the car, watching raindrops race down the glass, my heart hammering against my ribs. 24 hours ago, I was fleeing my apartment with a backpack of essentials. Now I'm about to enter a house worth millions that somehow belongs to me. The front door opens before I reach it. Miguel Alvarez stands in the entryway, his weathered face solemn. For 15 years, he's managed this estate, becoming more family than employee. Miss Hadley. His voice breaks slightly. Welcome home. I step inside, dripping onto the worn oak floors. The house smells like lemon oil and cinnamon, just as it always has. Your grandmother asked me to give you this. Miguel extends a small brass key. If things went this way. He leads me to Grandpa's study, where a heavy antique desk dominates the room. The key fits a bottom drawer, revealing a weathered leather journal bound with a faded ribbon. She said you would understand when the time came. Miguel squeezes my shoulder before leaving me alone. I curl into Grandpa's reading chair by the fireplace, tucking my feet beneath me as I open the journal. The first entry is dated 10 years ago. Gregory came today asking for another loan. Claimed his investment was guaranteed to triple within months. When Walter hesitated, he reminded us how expensive Cole's college tuition is becoming. We wrote the check. Walter suspects we won't see that money again. My stomach tightens. I flip forward several months. Gregory hasn't mentioned repayment. When I asked, he acted as if I'd forgotten he'd already repaid us. Walter says to let it go. It's only money, he says, but it's the pattern that worries me. I turn page after page, my fingers trembling. Serena brought designers to help update the house today. They measured rooms and took photos while she pointed out how tired everything looks. Later, I caught her photographing the silver service from Walter's mother. She jumped when she saw me, saying she wanted inspiration for her anniversary party decorations. The door creaks open. June Porter, housekeeper for over 20 years, enters with a tray of tea. Her eyes are red-rimmed. You're reading Mrs. Lila's journals. It's not a question. Did you know about all this? I gesture to the open pages. June sets down the tray. I kept records of my own. Mrs. Lila asked me to. She disappears, returning with a banker's box. Financial documents. Loan agreements your father never repaid. Startup proposals from your brother, all defaulted. She places a thick folder on top. And these are copies of property transfer documents your mother tried to get Miss Lila to sign 3 months before she passed. Claimed they were updated estate plans recommended by their advisor. I spread the papers across the desk. Thousands of dollars funneled to Dad's failing ventures. Cole's repeated requests for seed money that never produced results. Mom's attempted property transfers that would have quietly moved ownership before death. They were bleeding them dry. I whisper. For years, June confirms. Your grandfather insisted on believing the best of his son. Your grandmother was more clear-eyed. I find an entry from Christmas 2 years ago. Cole had too much wine at dinner. When he thought Walter and I had gone to bed, I overheard him telling Gregory, when the old folks die, we're set for life. Gregory laughed. Our grandson laughed about our deaths. My throat constricts. I remember that Christmas I'd worked double shifts to afford the train ticket home. Mom complained about my shabby sweater at dinner while Cole showed off his new designer watch. The doorbell rings. June glances at her watch. That'll be Mr. Shaw and Miss Park. Marcus Shaw enters first, carrying a leather portfolio, his normally composed face tense. As Grandpa's financial advisor for 20 years, he's the only one who truly understood the extent of their wealth. Hadley, he says, taking my hand. I've brought the complete portfolio. You need to understand what you're protecting. Evelyn Park follows, her silver hair pulled back severely. Grandpa's business partner at Summit Freight for 3 decades, she carries a stack of company records. Summit employees are reporting strange visitors, asking questions about shipping routes and client contracts. She says without preamble. Someone's digging. Aaron arrives last, legal documents tucked under his arm. I've prepared preliminary protective measures. We need to move quickly. They gather around the dining room table, forming a circle of protection I never knew I'd need. Each brings a piece of the puzzle, revealing the empire my grandparents built and how methodically my family has tried to dismantle it. My phone buzzes. Dad's voice fills the speaker when I play the voicemail. You have no idea what you're up against, Hadley. This can still end with everyone happy, or it can get very ugly. Your choice. While we're strategizing, the doorbell rings again. A courier delivers a manila envelope with no return address. Inside are my childhood photos with faces crossed out in red marker. This is escalating quickly, Aaron says, bagging the photos as evidence. Summit employees are reporting strange visitors. Your brother has started posting about your mental instability online. Your mother has called your workplace with family concerns. My hand shakes as I set down my teacup. What do we do? File for emergency protective orders, Aaron says, pulling out prepared documents. The evidence is overwhelming. Judge Carter will approve them immediately. There's something else, June says. Miss Lila set aside the cottage in Port Orchard in a separate trust. It's not part of the main estate. Somewhere safe if you need it. I think about my students, the kids who count on me showing up every day. I'll need to take a leave of absence from work. The weight of it all suddenly crashes down. I walk to Grandma's garden, now glistening with rain. Her roses will bloom soon without her to see them. I never wanted their money, I whisper to the wet earth. I just wanted them. But as I look back at the house where my unexpected allies wait, I realize Grandma and Grandpa gave me more than money. They gave me the truth, and people who will help me protect it. 3 days into my new old home, my morning coffee goes cold as I stare at the newspaper. The headline glares back. Family contest suspicious inheritance. My hand trembles as I scan quotes from unnamed family sources, claiming Grandma Lila suffered from diminished capacity during her final months. They're really doing this, I whisper to the empty kitchen. My phone buzzes with a text from Aaron. Gregory filed an emergency petition with the court, claims Lila was mentally incompetent when signing the will. Call me, claims Lila. Before I can dial, a notification pops up. Mom's smiling face fills my screen, a screenshot from the local morning show where she dabbed theatrical tears while describing her concerns about elder exploitation. The caption reads, "Heartbroken daughter speaks out about suspected elder abuse." The walls of Grandpa and Grandma's house, my house, now seem to press inward. I set the phone down, breathing deeply the way I tell my students to when anxiety overwhelms them. Miguel knocks gently before entering. "Miss Hadley, you should see this." He hands me his tablet, open to a social media page Cole created overnight. Justice for the Monroe Legacy. Already 400 followers. People I've known my entire life commenting about their concerns. Summit Freight called, Miguel adds, his weathered face solemn. 3 clients received anonymous letters, questioning the company's stability. They're attacking from every angle. My voice sounds distant, unfamiliar. Your grandfather anticipated this. Miguel gestures toward the study. Perhaps it's time you saw his business journals. In the oak-paneled study that still smells faintly of Grandpa's pipe tobacco, I open the leather-bound journal from 1987, the year Summit Freight nearly went bankrupt during the recession. Grandpa's neat handwriting fills the page. Third bank rejected our loan application today. Lila says we should sell the house. I won't risk our home. When everyone says you'll fail, that's when you find your backbone. Tomorrow I'll speak with the drivers about a temporary pay arrangement until we weather this. I touch the page, feeling the indentations his pen made decades ago. The words blur as tears well up. There's more, Miguel says, opening Grandma's desk drawer. He removes a small USB drive. Mrs. Lila installed security cameras last year. She never told your parents. On Grandpa's computer, I watch footage dated the day of the funeral. Dad and Cole, methodically moving through rooms, checking values on their phones, wrapping smaller items in their coats before leaving. Mom photographing silver and antiques, wiping away fake tears between shots. They were stealing, I whisper, while pretending to grieve. Mrs. Lila knew. She kept records of everything. The security system chimes, interrupting us. Miguel checks his phone. They're at the gates, all of them. My heart hammers against my ribs as I move to the front window. 3 vehicles idle outside the wrought iron gates. Dad's Mercedes, Mom's Range Rover, Cole's Tesla. Should I call Aaron? Miguel asks. I straighten my shoulders, remembering Grandpa's words. Finding your backbone. No, I'll handle this. The intercom crackles. Dad's voice, professional and commanding. Hadley, open the gates. We're here to collect family heirlooms that rightfully belong to all of us. I press the speaker button. I'll meet you at the front steps. Summer sun beats down as I stand alone on the wide limestone steps. The gates swing open automatically. I want witnesses to whatever happens next. Dad strides forward first, briefcase in hand, expression controlled but eyes flickering with calculation. Mom follows, camera ready in a tasteful black dress, while Cole lingers slightly behind, shoulders hunched. "This has gone far enough," Dad announces, projecting his voice like he's addressing a boardroom. "We're here for great-grandmother's silver service and the Tiffany lamps to start. For that. Those items were specifically listed in the will as part of my inheritance," I say, my voice steadier than I feel. "A will we're contesting," Mom interjects, her practiced concern slipping. "Sweetheart, you're in over your head. Let us help manage things until the courts sort this out." Cole steps forward suddenly, attempting to move past me up the stairs. "I'll just grab my stuff from my old room while we're—" He freezes as lights flash and a low hum fills the air. The new security system Aaron installed activates, red indicator lights blinking along the perimeter. "Trespassing prevention measures," I explain quietly. "The property is now monitored by multiple cameras streaming to a secure server." Mom gasps dramatically, clutching her chest before slowly sinking onto the manicured lawn. My own daughter, treating family like criminals. The crunch of gravel announces new arrivals. Miguel approaches from the side of the house, carrying a leather binder. "Miss Hadley, I've brought the complete inventory of household items as you requested, with provenance documentation." "Miss Hadley?" June's compact figure appears next, her gray hair neatly pinned back. "I witnessed them taking items after the service," she announces loudly. "I've provided a sworn statement to Mr. Feldman." A silver sedan pulls up behind my family's vehicles. Evelyn Park, Grandpa's business partner of 30 years, steps out, followed by 5 longtime Summit employees in company polos. "We came to show support," Evelyn says clearly. "Walter and Lila built this company on integrity. We stand by their wishes." Aaron's BMW glides to a stop next. He exits with a leather portfolio. "Ah, perfect timing. I was just coming to update Hadley on the restraining order, but since you're all here, I can serve these papers directly." Dad's face reddens as Aaron approaches with documents. Mom remains sprawled on the grass, her theatrical collapse forgotten as she watches the growing audience with calculation in her eyes. From the street, a cluster of people gather, neighbors, friends of my grandparents, watching quietly, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. I step forward. "This ends today." My voice carries across the suddenly silent driveway. Every word spoken here is being recorded, every action filmed. "You've shown who you really are, and now others are seeing it too." A news van slows at the property entrance, logo visible on its side. "Who called the media?" Dad snarls, his composure cracking. "We did," calls Mrs. Henderson from across the street, waving her cell phone. "Neighborhood watch. We look after our own." For the first time since Grandma's death, I see real fear in my father's eyes. He glances at the growing crowd, the cameras, the papers in Aaron's hand. "This isn't over," he mutters, but he's already retreating toward his car. Mom miraculously recovers from her fainting spell, hurrying after him with one worried glance at the news van. Cole hesitates, looking at me directly for the first time. Something unreadable crosses his face before he follows our parents. That night, I stand alone in my grandparents' bedroom, untouched since their passing. Grandma's knitting basket sits beside her reading chair, needles protruding from an unfinished blue scarf. Grandpa's reading glasses rest on his nightstand, folded neatly beside a half-read mystery novel. The grief I've been holding at bay crashes over me. I sink onto the edge of their bed, clutching one of Grandma's knitting needles. "I don't know if I can be what they believed I could be," I whisper into the emptiness. Dawn finds me still there, watching light gradually filter through lace curtains. Grandma made herself. Something settles in my chest, not peace exactly, but resolve. Later that morning, the team gathers in Grandpa's study, Aaron with legal folders, Marcus with financial projections, Evelyn with Summit operations reports. I take Grandpa's seat at the head of the table, no longer feeling like an imposter. "We need comprehensive plans," I tell them, "not just defending against their attacks, but building something sustainable." "I've prepared injunctions against further legal harassment," Aaron begins, sliding documents across the polished surface. Marcus taps his tablet. "I've secured the accounts and investments with additional verification protocols." "Summit's employee meeting went well," Evelyn reports. "Once they understood your commitment to maintaining operations and jobs, morale stabilized." "We're not just defending," I say, echoing Grandpa's steady voice in my memory. "We're building." A soft knock interrupts. June enters, carrying a dusty cardboard box. Found this in the attic storage. Thought you should see it. The box label, in Grandma's neat handwriting, reads simply, "In case of Gregory." Inside lie decades of meticulously organized materials, letters, recorded conversations, financial records, dated and cataloged with my grandmother's characteristic precision. At the bottom, wrapped in acid-free paper, lies a small leather-bound book. My breath catches as I gently lift it out. "Is this what I think it is?" I whisper. June nods, her eyes knowing. "Mrs. Lila said you'd recognize it when the time came." I hold Grandpa Walter's original business ledger from 1962, the founding document of Summit Freight, containing the legal framework that would make challenging the will nearly impossible. Our meeting adjourns with new determination. For the first time since the inheritance bombshell, I feel not just Grandpa's backbone, but my own. A week later, I am preparing to defend what's legally mine and protect my grandparents' legacy. I sit at Grandpa Walter's antique oak desk, running my fingers over the worn edges where his hands rested for decades. The leather chair still holds the impression of his body, a physical memory that comforts me as I lift the phone receiver for what feels like the 100th call today. Mr. Delgado. Yes, this is Hadley Martin. I appreciate you taking my call. I straighten my posture, channeling Grandpa's quiet confidence. I'd like to discuss the expansion of the profit-sharing program for Summit's drivers, effective immediately. The morning passes in a blur of meetings, each one another piece of the plan we've crafted. Summit Freight employees file into the study throughout the day, weather-worn drivers with calloused hands, office staff with curious eyes, mechanics with grease-stained fingers. Each leaves with shoulders a little straighter, eyes a little brighter. My grandfather believed a company is only as strong as the people who build it daily, I tell the gathered department heads. Starting next month, every employee participates in the expanded profit-sharing program. Healthcare coverage increases to include dependents. The education fund doubles. Evelyn hands out the detailed packets, while Marcus projects the financial models showing long-term sustainability. The room erupts in applause, genuine and warm, nothing like the hollow social media applause my mother craves. "Dr. Reynolds," I say later, phone pressed to my ear as I review the community needs assessment spread across the desk. The foundation wants to focus first on vocational training scholarships. My grandfather believed in the dignity of skilled trades. The foundation expert on the other end speaks excitedly about implementation timelines. I jot notes in the margins of the assessment, circling areas of greatest impact. My phone buzzes with a text from Aaron. Gregory contacted 3 major clients directly, claiming family concerns about Summit's stability. I exhale slowly, feeling the familiar tightness in my chest. The desk phone rings minutes later. Summit's operations manager reporting that Mom showed up at my school, cornering the principal with concerns about Hadley's state of mind. "Principal Kovacs didn't buy it," he assures me. "Said your mother seemed more unstable than you ever have." A knock at the door reveals Miguel, his expression grim as he holds a sealed package. This was delivered by courier, no return address. Inside, a thick folder labeled "Evidence of Manipulation" contains photos of me with my grandparents, annotated with dates and suspicious questions. Email printouts of supposed psychological assessments. Medical records with highlighted passages suggesting my undue influence. I flip to the last page and burst into unexpected laughter. They've accidentally included their own threatening emails to Grandma Lila from last year, complete with Gregory's signature block and legal threats when she refused to transfer property titles. "They're getting desperate," Aaron says when I call him. "Good thing we anticipated this." The next morning dawns clear and cool as I prepare for the Chamber of Commerce luncheon. Dad had planned this moment for weeks, according to our sources, a public confrontation where I'd be forced to defend myself among the business elite of Gig Harbor. "Ready?" Evelyn asks as we pull into the country club parking lot. Marcus adjusts his tie. "Remember, stay calm no matter what. We've got this covered." The banquet room falls quiet as we enter. Gregory's face darkens when he spots us, his body tensing like a predator preparing to pounce. I feel dozens of eyes tracking our progress to the reserved table. I've barely taken my seat when Dad approaches, his voice pitched to Carrie. "There she is, the girl who's destroying our family legacy. Walter would be ashamed of what you've done to Summit Freight." Before I can respond, Chamber President Jack Wilson stands, tapping his water glass. "Actually, Gregory, We're recognizing Summit Freight today for 40 years of business integrity and community service. Walter Monroe established this award, and we're honored to present it to his chosen successor. The room erupts in applause as Jack gestures for me to join him at the podium. My legs feel wooden as I rise, acutely aware of Dad's reddening face and Mom's frozen smile. My grandparents built Summit Freight on 2 foundations. I say, accepting the Crystal Award, excellence in service and investment in people. Their legacy isn't measured in dollars but in lives improved. The standing ovation washes over me in waves. Former drivers share stories of Grandpa helping them through tough times. Charity directors praise Grandma's quiet generosity. The community college president announces the new vocational scholarship program, funded by the Monroe Foundation. Later, Aaron's press release detailing Summit's employee protections makes the evening news, alongside statements from June and Miguel about my parents' treatment of my grandparents in their final years. The effects ripple through town like stones dropped in still water. Gregory's business partners request distance. Mom's social circle excludes her from fundraising galas. Cole's startup investors withdraw after learning of the pattern of financial manipulation. The country club board puts their membership under review. I refuse every interview request, every opportunity to criticize them publicly. We focus on building, not tearing down. I tell Miguel when he brings me the latest invitation from a morning show. The first crack appears 3 nights later. My phone rings at 11:36 p.m. Mom's ringtone. Hadley, she sobs, voice thick with what sounds like genuine emotion. This isn't what I wanted. You have to believe me. I say nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. Your father. She begins, then stops. I never meant for things to go this far. The second crack forms in a text from Cole the next morning. Dad's losing it. I didn't know about the loans he took in my name. Can we talk? Just us? Gregory's attorney calls Aaron the next day, requesting a meeting without Gregory present. They're imploding, Aaron tells me afterward. Their united front is crumbling. That night, I sit on the porch swing where Grandma and Grandpa spent countless evenings, my journal open on my lap. The pen hovers over the blank page before finally touching down. Victory feels hollow when it's family. But what's the alternative? Surrender the legacy they entrusted to me? Allow the exploitation they fought to prevent? The breeze carries the scent of Grandma's roses, planted decades ago but still blooming faithfully each year. Standing your ground doesn't always feel triumphant, but sometimes it's the only way to honor what matters most. A week later, I called my parents for the final confrontation. I position Walter's antique pocket watch on the polished conference table, a silent timekeeper for today's showdown. The grandfather clock in the foyer chimes 10 as car doors slam outside. They're here. Ready? Aaron asks, straightening his tie. I nod, smoothing grandmother Lila's scarf between my fingers. As ready as I'll ever be. Miguel opens the front door, his face professionally neutral, as he escorts my family into the home they tried to strip bare, while Grandma and Grandpa were still warm in their graves. Dad strides in first, confidence faltering only when he spots Judge Elaine Carter at the table. Mom follows, her camera-ready smile freezing when she notices Daniel Brooks, former police chief and Grandpa's fishing buddy, standing near the window. What is this? Dad demands, stopping short. We agreed to a family meeting, not a public tribunal. We agreed to mediation. I correct him. These are the mediators I've selected. Cole slips in last, eyes darting between our parents and me, tugging at his collar. For a fleeting moment, our eyes meet, and something like shame flickers across his face. Mom glides toward me, arms outstretched. Darling, surely we can speak privately first? Family matters should stay within. Family matters should involve actual family, I interrupt, my voice steadier than my racing heart. Please sit down. Dad's face darkens to a dangerous crimson. I refuse to participate in this circus. Either clear the room or we're leaving. We proceed with transparency or not at all, I say, gesturing to the chairs. Your choice. After a tense standoff, they sit. Aaron slides folders in front of each person with practiced precision. Exhibit A, he announces, tapping his laptop. The television screen on the wall illuminates with security footage. Walter and Lila, Monroe's home, the evening after the funeral. The video shows Dad and Cole loading paintings into Dad's SUV under cover of darkness. Mom can be seen carefully wrapping silver candlesticks in her scarf. Cole shifts uncomfortably. Mom's hand flies to her throat. Family heirlooms we were safeguarding, Dad says, dismissively, but his voice lacks conviction. Exhibit B. Aaron clicks forward. Financial records appear, each one highlighting unpaid loans to Dad's failed ventures, totaling over $4 million. Exhibit C. Aaron continues methodically through each damning piece of evidence. Mom's attempt to transfer property deeds while Grandma was hospitalized. Cole's string of defaulted startup investments, recorded phone conversations plotting asset division before Grandpa had even passed. With each revelation, Dad's rage builds visibly. His knuckles whiten around the folder edges. Mom's carefully constructed victim persona crumbles, mascara tracking down her cheeks. Cole stares at the table, shoulders hunched. Judge Carter makes notes without expression. Daniel shifts slightly closer to Dad when his breathing becomes dangerously rapid. Finally, Aaron opens Grandma's leather journal. In Lila Monroe's own words, dated the 14th of June last year, Gregory demanded another $100,000 today. When I reminded him of the previous unpaid loans, he suggested we wouldn't want Cole to know about certain family matters. I recognize the threat. Walter and I have decided, Hadley is our only hope for preserving what we've built. The room falls silent except for Mom's quiet sobbing. You manipulated them, Dad accuses, his voice trembling with fury. You turned them against us. No, I reply, my calm surprising even me. Your own actions are speaking for themselves. I slide a document forward. This is my offer. A small trust fund for each of you, conditional upon returning all items taken from this house, and ceasing all communication attempts with me, or anyone associated with Summit Freight or the Monroe Foundation. Dad laughs bitterly. Or what? Or I press charges for theft, elder abuse, and attempted fraud, I answer, all documented in triplicate, and witnessed by a sitting judge and former chief of police. You've turned everyone against us. Dad explodes, slamming his fist on the table. No, Dad, I say, meeting his eyes directly. Your own actions have done that all by themselves. The grandfather clock ticks loudly in the silence that follows. 10 minutes pass before Dad snatches the pen Aaron offers. The scratching of signatures feels like closing a book. As they leave, Cole hesitates at the doorway, looking back with an expression I can't quite read. For a moment, I think he might stay, might choose differently. Then Dad barks his name, and he follows them out. When the door closes, I exhale shakily. Aaron squeezes my shoulder. Judge Carter nods with approval. Daniel's weathered face breaks into a smile. Walter would be proud, he says quietly. Standing your ground isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when enough is enough. I touch Grandma's scarf, still wrapped around my neck. I never wanted their money, I whisper. I just wanted to be family. I know, Aaron says. That's exactly why your grandparents trusted you with everything they built. Outside, engines start, car doors slam. They drive away, and something in me knows it's for the last time. I am my grandparents' legacy now, not their money, their values. And some boundaries, once set, must never be crossed again. 6 months after the final confrontation, I still arrive at school by 7:30, my counseling office a sanctuary of listening ears and steady advice. The brass nameplate Hadley Martin, student counselor, remains the title I cherish most, despite the trust documents bearing words like executor and beneficiary. This morning, a small clipping from the business section sits on my desk. Summit Freight announced record profits under its new employee ownership model. Walter's trucks still rumble through town, but now 68 drivers have stakes in their futures. Miss Martin? My assistant pokes her head in. Your foundation guests are here. The Lila and Walter Monroe Foundation exists on paper and in $12 million of carefully allocated funding, but today marks something more tangible: our first scholarship recipients. 5 students wait nervously in the conference room, clutching acceptance packets. Their eyes widen as I explain how the Vocational Training Fund works: full tuition, living stipends, and guaranteed apprenticeships. My grandparents believed in building things that last. I tell them, now you're part of that legacy. Later, I drive the familiar road to the harbor house. The property feels different now, lighter somehow, as if the weight of secrecy has lifted. I park beside Evelyn's sensible sedan and Marcus's old Volvo. Inside, the dining room table that once witnessed my family's greed now hosts a celebration. June sets out Lila's china, while Miguel arranges Walter's prized chess set nearby. Remember our first meeting here? Aaron asks, helping with water glasses. You could barely speak without trembling. Hard to believe that was the same person who stared down Gregory Martin at the gates. Evelyn laughs. I run my fingers along the table's edge, remembering. Same house, same people, different Hadley. We toast with sparkling cider when Marcus announces the Foundation's first major project, a 3D printing laboratory for the community college's technical program. Lila and Walter would be so proud of what you've built, Miguel says, his eyes misting. That night, I flip through my therapy journal, tracing the path from panic attacks to purpose. Pages filled with grief exercises give way to recipes June has taught me from Lila's collection. Notes on Walter's favorite chess openings occupy margins near pressed flowers from the cottage garden. The old cat, Professor, finally allows me to stroke his ears as he settles on Lila's favorite chair. 6 months ago, he hissed whenever I entered the room. Progress comes in many forms. My phone buzzes with a familiar area code. Gregory's business has finally collapsed, and he needs a small bridge loan. 3 hours later, Serena emails her application for the Foundation's board of directors. Before bed, Cole texts about his newest startup. This one is different, I swear. The pattern remains unchanged. My response does too. Polite, firm refusal. On my 30th birthday, I'm surprised by a gathering at the cottage. No extravagant gifts, just thoughtful tokens, a vintage edition of my favorite book, Seeds from June's Garden, a handmade scarf. Evelyn raises her glass. To choosing your family by their actions, not their blood. Aaron updates us on the permanent legal protections now in place, while Marcus outlines the Foundation's growing community impact. The following Tuesday, a sophomore sits in my office, describing family pressure that echoes my past. They say I owe them, she whispers, that everything they've done was for me. I listen with understanding born from experience. When she finishes, I hand her a carefully prepared packet therapy options. Legal resources, boundary-setting worksheets. Your worth isn't measured by their approval. I tell her, words I needed to hear 6 months ago. At sunset, I walk the property grounds, stopping at the newly planted grove, 1 tree for each scholarship recipient. A small bench bears a simple plaque, Legacy Lives Through Love, Lila and Walter. I open Lila's journal to its blank final pages and begin writing my own entries. Looking up at the warm glow of house lights, I feel a peace that money could never purchase. The inheritance that matters most wasn't in the bank accounts after all.
After our parents passed away, my older brother kicked me and my 5-year-old child out into the freezing rain. He laughed and told me to enjoy being homeless because he made sure I got absolutely nothing. But he had no idea that at the will reading the very next day, he would be the one fainting on the floor when the lawyer read the final section. My name is Elise, 33 years old, and I work as a bioinformatics analyst. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had a toxic family member try to destroy your life only to watch karma handle them perfectly. The heavy thud of my suitcase hitting the wet pavement echoed through the freezing Chicago rain. The funeral for our parents was just yesterday. The soil on their graves was not even settled yet, and here I was standing in the driveway of the $8 million family estate. My 5-year-old son Leo clutched my leg, shivering against the biting wind. Standing on the grand covered porch was my 38-year-old brother Preston. Beside him stood his wife Jasmine. Jasmine, a stunning African-American woman who spent her days obsessed with country club memberships and designer labels, had her arms crossed over her expensive cashmere sweater. She sneered down at us, looking as though we were nothing more than trash left on her pristine driveway. Leo whimpered, and his small raincoat slipped from my grip, landing on the bottom step of the porch. Before I could reach down to grab it, Preston stepped forward and deliberately kicked the bright yellow jacket straight into a muddy puddle. I gasped, pulling Leo closer to my side to shield him from the cold and from the cruelty of his own uncle. "The free ride is over, Elise," Preston spat, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Mom and Dad are dead. That means your time of leeching off this family in this house is officially done. I am the sole legal heir to this estate. Get off my property before I call the police and have you escorted away for trespassing." Jasmine leaned against one of the massive stone pillars, swirling a glass of wine. Honestly, Elise, it is embarrassing, she said, her voice dripping with fake pity. You are a single mother who sits at a computer all day typing up data or whatever nonsense you call a career. Preston is a wealth management director. He is the pride of this family. You have always been the stain they tried to hide. Now pack up your little brat and go find a shelter. I stared at the two of them, feeling the icy rain soak through my clothes. I did not scream. I did not cry. I tightened my grip on Leo's small hand, ensuring he felt safe despite the monster standing on the porch. They thought my job as a bioinformatics analyst was a joke, a lowly tech job that barely paid the bills. They had spent my entire life treating me like the scapegoat, while Preston paraded around as the golden child squandering money and pretending to be a successful businessman. But they had absolutely no idea how much I actually earned or the brilliant quiet life I had built for myself away from their toxic spotlight. Do not speak about my son, I said, my voice steady despite the freezing rain. And do not pretend you have won anything yet, Preston. You are throwing us out the day after the funeral. That shows exactly what kind of man you are. Preston scoffed, walking down one step so he could tower over me. I am a man who protects his assets. You really thought Mom and Dad were going to leave a piece of this mansion to a single mother with a fake science job? I made sure they signed everything over to me. You get nothing, not a dime. Now get out of my sight before things get ugly. I looked at the house I had grown up in. The massive windows, the perfectly manicured lawn, the heavy oak doors that were now closed to me. For years I had endured their snide remarks at Thanksgiving dinners, their subtle jabs about me being a single mother, their relentless boasting about Preston's high society life. My parents had often stayed silent to keep the peace, avoiding confrontations with Preston because his temper was unpredictable. But I knew the truth about my parents, and more importantly, I knew the truth about the legal documents locked away in the family lawyer's office. I did not need to beg. I did not need to fight for a spot on that porch. I picked up Leo's muddy coat from the puddle, shook off the dirty water, and held my son's hand tightly. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone to arrange our departure. I opened my banking app to quickly transfer some funds to my checking account so I could order a premium rideshare. But as the screen loaded, a glaring red error message popped up. Account frozen. I frowned, refreshing the app. Another error message. A loud, mocking laugh echoed from the porch. I looked up to see Preston waving a manila folder in the air. Having trouble getting a car, Elise, he yelled over the sound of the rain. I took the death certificates to the bank first thing this morning. I froze all the joint family accounts. Every single one of them. You cannot touch a penny of Mom and Dad's money. Jasmine giggled, leaning her head against Preston's shoulder. Looks like you will be taking the bus, Elise. Make sure Leo does not drip mud on the seats. They honestly thought they had trapped me. For years I had kept a joint account with my parents to help them manage their household bills when their health started failing. Preston assumed that was my only source of money. He assumed my job as a bioinformatics analyst paid a miserable entry-level salary. He had always called me a glorified computer geek. He had no idea that analyzing massive genomic datasets for private pharmaceutical companies paid an incredibly lucrative salary. I did not panic. I simply closed the banking app and opened my digital wallet. I pulled out my physical wallet just to make a point, slipping my sleek, heavy metal black credit card out from the leather slot. It was an exclusive invitation-only card that required a massive annual spend and an even larger income to maintain. I tapped it against my phone screen, linking it directly to the Black Car Service app. I ordered a luxury SUV to our exact location. Preston watched me, his smug smile faltering slightly as he tried to figure out what I was doing. "Who are you calling the homeless shelter?" he taunted, though his voice lacked its previous confident punch. "I am calling my ride," I replied, slipping the heavy metal card back into my pocket. Less than 3 minutes later, a pristine jet-black luxury SUV rolled smoothly up the long driveway, its headlights cutting through the gray storm. The driver, wearing a sharp suit, immediately stepped out with a large umbrella, hurrying over to shield Leo and me from the freezing rain. Jasmine's jaw dropped. She recognized the elite car service immediately. It was the exact same company she constantly begged Preston to book for her country club events, the one he always claimed was too expensive for casual use. "How are you paying for that?" Preston demanded, taking a step down the porch stairs, the manila folder slipping from his grasp. "Your accounts are frozen." "Your accounts are frozen, Preston," I corrected him, letting the driver take my soaked suitcase and place it gently into the spacious trunk. "My personal accounts are perfectly fine. Enjoy the house. I will see you at the lawyer's office." I climbed into the warm leather interior of the SUV, pulling Leo onto my lap and wrapping a dry towel the driver offered around his shivering shoulders. As the car smoothly reversed down the driveway, I looked out the tinted window one last time. Preston and Jasmine were standing in the cold, staring after us, with expressions of pure confusion and sudden terrifying doubt. They thought they had ruined me, but they were about to learn that they had just sealed their own destruction. The luxury SUV glided through the rain-soaked streets of Chicago, leaving the sprawling estate and my toxic brother far behind. Leo had fallen asleep against my shoulder, the exhaustion of the past few days finally catching up with him. I stroked his hair, feeling a fierce protective instinct settle deep in my chest. Preston and Jasmine honestly believed they had cast us out into the gutter. They had no idea I had been leasing a stunning 3-bedroom penthouse in one of the city's most exclusive high-rises for the past 6 months. I had kept my living arrangements a complete secret from my family. My parents had been ill, and I spent most of my time at the estate caring for them, taking the brunt of their declining health, while Preston made brief, performative appearances just long enough to complain about the medical bills. I had leased the penthouse as a sanctuary for Leo and myself, paying the exorbitant rent easily with my bioinformatics salary. The driver pulled up to the sleek glass entrance of my building. A uniformed concierge immediately stepped out with a large umbrella, greeting me by name and helping with my suitcase. We rode the private elevator up to the top floor. Walking into the penthouse, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for days. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a sweeping, unobstructed view of the glittering Chicago skyline. The space was immaculate, secure, and entirely ours. I carried Leo to his room, gently tucking him into his warm bed, and then poured myself a glass of water. The battle was far from over, but we were safe. The next morning, the real war began. I woke up early, made Leo a stack of pancakes, and sat down at the kitchen island with my coffee to check my phone. My screen was flooded with notifications. Dozens of text messages, missed calls, and social media alerts. I opened Instagram first, and my blood boiled. Jasmine had posted a long dramatic essay accompanied by a black and white photo of my parents' funeral. She had tagged every single member of our extended family, along with half the members of her precious country club. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. "It is truly heartbreaking to witness the greed of some people during times of immense grief," Jasmine wrote. "Yesterday, right after we laid my beloved in-laws to rest, Preston's sister Elise attempted to extort us for money. When we refused to drain the family accounts to fund her irresponsible lifestyle, she threw a massive tantrum, grabbed her poor child, and stormed off into the rain. Preston and I begged her to stay, offering her a roof over her head despite her erratic behavior, but she chose pride over her own son's safety. Please pray for little Leo. We are heartbroken, but we must stay strong to protect the family legacy." The audacity of her lies was staggering. She painted me as an unstable extortionist, and Preston as a benevolent savior. She even managed to weave in her fake concern for Leo to maximize the sympathy from her high society followers. I clicked over to my text messages. The flying monkeys had been dispatched. My phone was a war zone of incoming attacks from aunts, uncles, and cousins who had swallowed Jasmine's story without a single question. Aunt Brenda sent a scathing paragraph. "How could you be so selfish, Elise? Your brother is grieving and you demand money. You have always been a disappointment to your parents." Uncle Richard followed up with his own venom. "Do not bother coming to the family reunion this year. You are a disgrace. Preston is trying to hold the estate together and you act like a spoiled brat. You need psychiatric help." My cousin pointed out that I should be ashamed of putting Leo in danger just to throw a tantrum. They were relentless. Years of Preston spinning narratives at family barbecues while I was busy studying or working had solidified my role as the unstable failure in their eyes. They loved tearing me down. It made them feel superior. I watched the notifications roll in one after another, each more vicious than the last. A younger, weaker version of me might have cried. I might have frantically typed out paragraphs of defense begging them to believe the truth, posting screenshots of my own to clear my name. But I was not that girl anymore. I was a 33-year-old woman who analyzed complex genetic algorithms for a living. I knew how to look at data, remove the emotional noise, and execute a flawless strategy. Arguing with fools on the internet was a waste of my time. I locked my phone screen, took a calm sip of my coffee, and dialed the one number that actually mattered, Mr. Caldwell. He was 65 years old, a sharp, seasoned estate lawyer who had managed my parents' legal affairs for over 2 decades. He picked up on the second ring. "Elise," he said, his voice grave but surprisingly steady. "I was hoping you would call. I assume you have seen the circus your sister-in-law is orchestrating online." "I am currently the most hated woman in the family," I replied smoothly. "Preston froze the joint checking accounts and kicked me out of the estate yesterday. He thinks he won the entire board." Mr. Caldwell let out a low, dry chuckle that surprised me. Let them celebrate, Elise. Let them type their little posts and gather their sympathy. Preston has always been a fool who plays checkers while thinking it is chess. I leaned forward, lowering my voice so I would not wake Leo. "What exactly is going on, Mr. Caldwell?" Preston acted so confident about the inheritance. He practically guaranteed I was getting nothing. "Your parents were many things," Mr. Caldwell said slowly, "but they were not blind. In their final years, they saw exactly who your brother had become. They saw his greed, his wife's obsession with status, and how cruelly they treated you and Leo. They came to me 3 years ago with a very specific, very ironclad set of instructions." A shiver of anticipation ran down my spine. "So the will reading on Friday. Do not engage with the relatives," Mr. Caldwell instructed firmly. "Do not respond to Jasmine's posts. Ignore every single text message. Keep your hands clean and your head high. You just show up to my office this Friday at 10 in the morning for the official reading of the will. Dress well." He paused, and I could practically hear the satisfying smirk on the old lawyer's face. "Your parents knew exactly who Preston was. The trap is already set, Elise. Just wait until Friday." I hung up the phone and looked out over the city. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. Preston and Jasmine thought they had written the final chapter of my life. They were about to discover they had just authored their own ruin. I poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, feeling lighter than I had in months. Friday could not come fast enough. Friday morning arrived with clear, crisp skies. I woke up feeling a profound sense of calm. The frantic anxiety that Preston and Jasmine had expected me to suffer was completely absent. I dressed with deliberate care. I bypassed my usual comfortable work clothes and pulled out a sharp, tailored navy suit I had purchased after a major stock payout. I paired it with simple, elegant heels. I looked exactly like what I was, a highly successful, independent woman who did not need a single dime from anyone. I dropped Leo off at his elite private preschool, giving him an extra tight hug. He was safe, oblivious to the storm brewing in our family, and that was all that mattered. I then hailed a private car to downtown Chicago, stepping out in front of the towering glass skyscraper that housed Mr. Caldwell's law firm. The receptionist guided me to the executive conference room at the end of the hall. The heavy mahogany doors were already open. I walked in to find Preston and Jasmine treating the legal office like a VIP lounge. Jasmine was practically vibrating with excitement. She wore a bright red designer dress that screamed for attention, clutching a luxury handbag on her lap. But it was her wrist that caught my eye. She was wearing my late mother's vintage gold Rolex. It was a family heirloom, something my mother had explicitly told me she wanted to pass down to a granddaughter one day. Jasmine had clearly raided my parents' safe before the funeral was even over. She caught me looking at it and intentionally adjusted her sleeve to show it off more prominently, flashing a wicked, triumphant smile. Preston slouched in a leather chair at the head of the table, looking like a king waiting for his crown. He wore a custom suit and was actively scrolling through his phone, likely looking at luxury cars or real estate expansions. When he saw me enter, he let out a loud, theatrical sigh. "Look who decided to show up," Preston sneered, tossing his phone onto the polished wooden table. "Did you walk here, Elise? I heard the homeless shelters downtown are at full capacity right now. I hope you brought a sleeping bag for you and the kid." I did not take the bait. I pulled out a chair opposite them, sat down and folded my hands neatly on the table. "You should save your energy, Preston," I said, my voice perfectly level. "You are going to need it." Jasmine let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Oh, look at her pretending to be brave. It is pathetic. We know you are broke, Elise. Everyone in our social circle knows what a disaster you are. You tried to extort us and it failed. Now you get to sit here and watch Preston inherit the empire while you get absolutely nothing." Mr. Caldwell entered the room through a side door carrying a thick leather binder. His face was a mask of absolute professional detachment. He did not offer any warm greetings or sympathetic platitudes. He simply took his seat at the center of the table, adjusted his glasses, and opened the binder. "We are here for the reading of the last will and testament of your parents," Mr. Caldwell stated, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "This document supersedes all previous versions and was finalized with full medical clearance and psychiatric evaluation to ensure absolute legal binding. It is uncontestable." Preston leaned forward, practically salivating. "Skip the legal jargon, Caldwell. Just get to the assets. Let us get this over with so I can call my real estate broker." Mr. Caldwell gave Preston a look that could freeze water. "I advise you to listen carefully, Preston. I will read this exactly as written." The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the formal declarations. I watched Preston tap his foot impatiently while Jasmine gripped his arm, her eyes wide with greedy anticipation. "To my eldest son, Preston," Mr. Caldwell read aloud, his voice steady and clear. "I leave the primary family estate, the property located in the northern suburbs, including all attached acreage and fixtures." Preston threw his hands up in a silent cheer. Jasmine actually squealed, leaning over to kiss his cheek. "We did it, baby," she whispered loudly. "The house is ours." Mr. Caldwell did not stop. "Furthermore, to Preston, I leave the entirety of Adams Wealth Management, including the corporate name and its associated operational licenses." Preston slammed his hand on the table in pure ecstasy. "Yes, the company and the house." He turned his gaze to me, his face twisted into a mask of pure malice. "Do you hear that, Elise? I own it all. I am the sole owner of the estate and the business. You are officially erased from this family. I am going to make sure you never get a job in this city again. You are nothing." I did not flinch. I kept my eyes locked on Mr. Caldwell. The lawyer had not closed the binder. He was waiting patiently for Preston's outburst to conclude. Mr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses again, looking over the rim at my brother. "Preston, I strongly advise you to sit back and remain silent until I have finished. The inheritance of these assets comes with specific binding encumbrances." Preston rolled his eyes, leaning back in his chair with a heavy sigh. "Fine. Read the fine print. Probably just some property taxes. I will pay them out of the company accounts by tomorrow afternoon." Mr. Caldwell turned the page. The rustle of the thick paper sounded incredibly loud in the quiet room. "The estate property inherited by Preston is subject to a reverse mortgage, executed 36 months prior to our passing." Mr. Caldwell read, his tone completely flat. "The current outstanding debt, which has accrued significant compound interest, is due immediately upon the execution of this will. The total balance owed to the bank is exactly $9.2 million. The blood drained from Preston's face so fast he looked physically ill. The arrogant smirk vanished, replaced by a look of sheer terror. What he choked out. $9 million. "That is a mistake. The house is only worth $8 million. "It is not a mistake," Mr. Caldwell replied coldly. "Your parents extracted the total equity of the estate to fund other ventures. Failure to satisfy this $9.2 million debt within 30 days will result in immediate foreclosure asset seizure and personal bankruptcy for the inheriting party. You are legally responsible for this debt as of today. Jasmine gripped the table, her knuckles turning white. Her eyes darted wildly between Preston and the lawyer. Preston, what is he talking about? You said we were rich. You said we owned the house free and clear. Shut up, Jasmine! Preston snapped, panic bleeding into his voice. He slammed both hands on the table, glaring at the lawyer. Fine, whatever. I inherited Adams Wealth Management. The company handles multi-million-dollar portfolios. I will just liquidate some corporate assets and cover the reverse mortgage. It is a minor setback. Mr. Caldwell shook his head slowly, almost pityingly. You inherited the corporate name and the operational licenses, Preston. That is all. What do you mean that is all? Preston demanded, his voice cracking. Where are the client accounts? Where is the liquid capital? Adams Wealth Management was legally gutted 3 years ago. Mr. Caldwell explained, delivering the final crushing blow. All liquid assets, client portfolios, intellectual property, and real estate holdings were legally transferred out of the corporation. You inherited an empty corporate shell. It has zero operating capital. It has zero assets. It has zero clients. You just inherited a worthless name and a $9 million debt that will bankrupt you before the end of the month. The silence in the conference room was absolute. The ticking of the wall clock sounded like a bomb waiting to go off. I watched my brother realize that the empire he had spent his entire life bragging about was nothing but an illusion designed to ruin him. After our parents passed away, my older brother kicked me and my 5-year-old child out into the freezing rain. He laughed and told me to enjoy being homeless because he made sure I got absolutely nothing. But he had no idea that at the will reading the very next day, he would be the one fainting on the floor when the lawyer read the final section. My name is Elise, 33 years old, and I work as a bioinformatics analyst. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had a toxic family member try to destroy your life, only to watch karma handle them perfectly. The silence in the conference room was absolute. The ticking of the wall clock sounded like a bomb waiting to go off. I watched my brother realize that the empire he had spent his entire life bragging about was nothing but an illusion designed to ruin him. Preston's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The realization was suffocating him in real time. He looked like a man who had just stepped off a cliff and was waiting for the ground to rush up and meet him. Jasmine finally broke the silence, her shrill voice echoing off the mahogany walls. "This is a joke!" she shrieked, slamming her luxury handbag onto the table. "You are lying, Caldwell. They had millions. Where is the actual money? Where are the stocks? The offshore accounts?" Mr. Caldwell did not flinch at her outburst. He calmly adjusted his glasses and looked down at the final page in the heavy leather binder. "I am not finished," he stated coldly. "There is one final section to this document. I highly recommend you both sit down and listen." Preston slumped back into his chair, his hands trembling violently. His arrogant posture was completely gone, replaced by the panicked fidgeting of a trapped animal. Jasmine remained standing, glaring at the lawyer, but she clamped her mouth shut. 3 years prior to their passing, Mr. Caldwell read, his voice slicing through the heavy air. Your parents executed a complete liquidation of all tangible asset stock portfolios and the operational capital of Adams Wealth Management. The total sum of these liquidated assets, amounting to exactly $40.5 million, was transferred into a generation-skipping irrevocable trust. Preston's eyes darted toward me, a sickening realization beginning to dawn on his pale face. The sole exclusive beneficiary of this trust is my grandson, Leo. Mr. Caldwell continued reading the exact words my parents had signed. Furthermore, the sole trustee granted absolute, uncontestable, and unilateral control over the entirety of this $40 million fund is my daughter, Elise. The entire room froze. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded neatly on the table, maintaining eye contact with my brother. Elise has full discretion over the disbursement, investment, and management of these funds. Mr. Caldwell concluded, closing the thick binder with a definitive thud. This trust is irrevocable. It cannot be contested, challenged, or altered by any party under any circumstances. This concludes the reading of the will. For 10 agonizing seconds, nobody moved. Then the reality of the situation crashed into Preston all at once. He was bankrupt. He was $9 million in debt. He was facing immediate foreclosure. And the sister he had thrown out into the freezing rain, the sister he had mocked and degraded his entire life, was now sitting across from him with absolute control over $40 million. Preston let out a strangled, wheezing sound. He clutched his chest, his breath coming in short, rapid gasps. His face turned an alarming shade of gray. Preston Jasmine asked, her anger suddenly replaced by genuine panic. "Preston, what is wrong?" He tried to stand up, reaching out blindly as if to grab me, but his legs gave out completely. Preston's eyes rolled back in his head and he collapsed forward like a felled tree. His head slammed hard against the thick edge of the glass conference table before his entire body hit the floor with a sickening thud. He was completely unconscious. Jasmine let out a blood-curdling scream. She dropped to her knees beside him, frantically shaking his shoulders. "Call an ambulance! Somebody call an ambulance! He is not waking up!" She shrieked, her perfect socialite facade entirely shattered. Mr. Caldwell calmly picked up the desk phone and pressed a button to summon his reception staff to call emergency services. He did not look panicked. He looked like a man who had just successfully executed the final wishes of his clients. I stood up slowly, smoothing the wrinkles from my tailored navy suit. I reached across the table and picked up my sealed copy of the trust documents, sliding them neatly into my briefcase. "You did this!" Jasmine screamed at me from the floor, tears ruining her expensive makeup. "You planned this, you psychopath! You stole our money!" "I did not steal anything, Jasmine," I said, my voice as calm as a winter morning. "I am just a bioinformatics analyst. I sit at a computer all day. You two are the financial geniuses. Enjoy your $9 million debt." Without waiting for the paramedics to arrive, I turned and walked out of the conference room. I strode past the panicked receptionist, stepped into the private elevator, and descended to the lobby. The crisp Chicago air felt incredible against my face as I stepped outside. I hailed a car and headed back to my penthouse. I had a son to pick up from preschool and $40 million to manage. Over the next 48 hours, silence reigned. There were no more social media posts from Jasmine. There were no hateful text messages from the extended family. The flying monkeys had completely vanished. Word of Preston's massive debt and my absolute control of the estate had clearly leaked through the grapevine. The very relatives who had called me a disgrace just days ago were now dead silent, likely terrified of angering the woman who held the keys to the family fortune. Preston spent 2 days in the hospital recovering from a minor concussion and a severe panic attack. But waking up in a hospital bed was only the beginning of his nightmare. The bank wasted no time. The moment the death certificates were processed, the reverse mortgage became due. The foreclosure countdown had officially begun. Sitting in my sunlit penthouse watching Leo build a complex tower out of magnetic blocks, I knew Preston and Jasmine would not just accept defeat. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. They were losing their mansion, their status, and their future. They needed money, and I was the only one who had it. Since the trust was ironclad and legally untouchable, they could not attack the money directly. They had to attack the only vulnerability I had. They had to go after the beneficiary. They had to go after Leo. I was in the middle of analyzing a massive genomic dataset on my dual monitors when the heavy authoritative knock echoed through my penthouse. It was not a polite tap. It was the loud, demanding pounding of law enforcement. I glanced at my security camera feed on my tablet. Standing outside my double doors were 2 serious-looking individuals in business casual attire, holding clipboards flanked by a uniformed Chicago police officer. I felt a cold spike of adrenaline, but my logical mind instantly took over. I took a deep breath, walked to the foyer, and pulled open the door. "Elise Adams," the woman with the clipboard asked. Her eyes immediately darted past me, scanning the immaculate sun-drenched living room. "Yes, I am Elise," I replied, keeping my voice polite and steady. "How can I help you?" "I am Agent Torres with Child Protective Services, and this is Agent Miller," she said, holding up her badge. "We received an urgent anonymous tip regarding the safety and welfare of a 5-year-old boy named Leo. The report claims the mother is suffering from a severe psychotic break, living in squalor, and actively physically abusing the child. We need to come inside and inspect the premises immediately. The sheer malice of the lie was breathtaking. Preston and Jasmine had actually done it. In a desperate, vile attempt to gain custody of Leo and control the $40 million trust, they had weaponized the state against me. They wanted to rip my child from my arms. "Of course, officer. Please come in," I said, stepping aside and gesturing to my pristine, luxurious home. "Let us clear this up right now." The words of Mr. Caldwell echoed in my mind for the next 48 hours. "The trap is set." I repeated the phrase to myself like a quiet mantra as Friday morning finally arrived, bringing with it a biting chill that swept off Lake Michigan. I did not feel the crushing anxiety that Preston and his wife undoubtedly expected me to suffer. Instead, a profound, icy calm had settled over my entire body. I went about my morning routine with mechanical precision. I prepared breakfast for Leo, packed his favorite snacks, and drove him to his elite private preschool. As I hugged him goodbye at the classroom door, I felt a surge of fierce protective energy. He was safe, completely shielded from the venomous storm brewing within our family. Today was solely about ensuring he would remain safe forever. Returning to my apartment, I walked into my closet and bypassed my usual comfortable work attire. I needed armor for what was to come. I selected a sharp, tailored charcoal suit that I had purchased after closing a particularly lucrative biomedical consulting contract. I paired it with simple leather heels and pulled my hair back into a sleek, severe style. Looking in the mirror, I did not see the helpless, discarded sister they believed me to be. I saw a highly paid bioinformatics analyst, a woman whose entire career was built on identifying patterns, isolating anomalies, and executing flawless logic. I was ready. I ordered a private car to downtown Chicago, stepping out onto the bustling sidewalk in front of the towering glass skyscraper that housed Mr. Caldwell's prestigious law firm. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and polished steel, reeking of old money and generational power. I gave my name to the security desk and was directed to the private elevators reserved for senior partners and their high-net-worth clients. When I stepped off the elevator on the 42nd floor, a receptionist with a hushed, professional voice guided me down a long, quiet corridor. We entered the executive conference room. It was an imposing space dominated by a massive mahogany table and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a dizzying panoramic view of the city below. I chose a seat facing the double doors, folded my hands neatly on the cool surface of the table, and waited. The silence in the room was heavy, thick with the weight of the legacy my parents had left behind. 10 minutes later, the heavy wooden doors swung open with aggressive force. Preston and Jasmine made their grand entrance, treating the solemn legal office like a VIP lounge at a nightclub. They were loud, obnoxious, and practically vibrating with greedy anticipation. Preston strode in wearing a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than my first car. He carried himself with an insufferable swagger, his chest puffed out, acting as though he already owned the building and everyone inside it. He viewed this entire legal proceeding as a mere formality, a quick signature before he was handed the keys to the kingdom. Jasmine walked in right beside him, completely ignoring the somber nature of a post-funeral meeting. As a woman who spent her life clawing for status among the country club elite, she was dressed to ensure everyone knew she had won. The striking African-American socialite wore a vibrant, excessively tight designer dress and carried a limited edition handbag that she placed on the table with a deliberate, heavy thud. But it was her wrist that immediately caught my eye and sent a sudden jolt of cold fury straight through my chest. Gleaming against her dark skin was a vintage solid gold Rolex. I recognized it instantly. It was my late mother's most prized possession. It was the one specific heirloom my mother had explicitly promised to pass down to me, hoping I would one day give it to a daughter of my own. Jasmine had clearly raided my parents' estate, safe the second the funeral ended. She saw my eyes lock onto the watch, and her lips curled into a wicked, triumphant smile. She deliberately pulled back her sleeve, resting her wrist on the mahogany table so the gold would catch the overhead lights. "Look who decided to show up!" Preston sneered. tossing his smartphone onto the table and pulling out the chair at the head of the board, assuming a position of absolute authority. I honestly expected you to send a proxy, Elise. Did you walk all the way downtown? I hear the homeless shelters are pretty full this time of year. I hope you managed to secure a bottom bunk. I did not blink. I kept my face entirely stone, like employing the exact same emotional detachment I used when analyzing corrupted datasets. You should save your breath, Preston, I replied, my voice perfectly level and devoid of any warmth. You are going to need it today. Jazz